Ramaphosa says the decision has been endorsed by the leaders of the parties in the Government of National Unity at a meeting held today. He has signed for the legislation to be implemented from today. The South African Democratic Teachers Union had threatened to go to court to compel the president to set a date for implementing key clauses of the BELA Act. They had expressed frustration over delays in executing the law that was signed back in September. Meanwhile, the SACP had threatened a nationwide strike on the day schools reopen in January, demanding that the law be put into practice. Ramaphosa says all bodies and officials responsible for the implementation of the Act will be required to conduct themselves in accordance with the Constitution. We're going to get some reaction to this now because Dr. Jaco Deacon is CEO for the Federation of Associations of Governing Bodies of Southern African Schools. Doctor, thank you so much for the time. Really appreciate it here as well. Then you had previously been saying that you saw this act then as feasible with clear rules of engagement. Your happiness then with regards to the bill ultimately being implemented?
Well, it's been long expected, so nobody can say that it came as a surprise. The president warned again he's going to give only 3 months for deliberations. Now, what we did is we did submit the proposals to fine-tune those clauses, to strengthen cooperative governance and also to strengthen the partnership principle. But now we'll have to make it work in practice. So we will definitely support our members when the schools reopen to implement those 2 clauses in a fair manner and also to ensure that the officials don't abuse their powers in that regard. There's a clear process to deal with admissions and the language policy, and we'll assist our members to make sure that they comply, but the officials also comply with the provisions.
Yeah, you had been speaking there about the applications you had sort of been made and, you know, you put forward as well to the portfolio committees and the provincial sessions themselves. Indeed. What are the opportunities you're seeing here as well? Because you had previously spoken about how this may bring uncertainty, but it also brings opportunity.
Yeah, for sure. I think the first important thing is that the issues that's raised in BELA will not really address the systemic issues that we find in the education sector. It's not going to improve service delivery. It's not going to make sure that we've got teachers in every single class. Doesn't build new schools. That's still the responsibility of our provincial education department and MSCs. This is a mechanism that will ensure that the administration will run smoothly, but also to define the different roles and responsibilities of the parties. So it's also in line with some of the court rulings from the Constitutional Court, bringing in those, instead of just the court ruling on how to deal with admissions and language, for instance, it's now codified in law. So that's indeed an opportunity. The one aspect that we think will still be postponed, the implementation date, will be that of the grade R learners, the compulsory school-going age. The system is not yet ready. I haven't seen that publication yet, but I presume the grade R implementation date will still be a date in the future and won't be implemented immediately.
Yeah, and previously there was also the opposition then from the Democratic Alliance, Action SA and the ACDP when it comes to this. Do you anticipate further sort of pushback or some opposition to whether it be certain parts of this legislation, ones that you have said as well that you reserve the right, of course, to challenge should it be necessary?
Yeah, I do believe there will definitely be litigation. If you just consider the NETLAC agreement between government and Solidarity, I don't think Solidarity will simply walk away from that agreement. I think they'll try to enforce that agreement. If not, then they'll definitely approach the court to delay the implementation. And then a number of parties indicated they feel that there's sufficient grounds for the constitutional challenge. So I think there will be litigation on constitutional grounds, and we prepare ourselves for the implementation on grassroots level. If there's abuse on grassroots level, that we are ready to approach the courts, but that's on the application. But on the constitutionality, I think there will definitely be challenges, and then I think Solidarity will definitely use that NETLAC agreement to challenge the final decision by the president.
Yeah, you had also spoken about preferring then that the cooperative model be strengthened rather than watered down. Has this agreement then with the Government of National Unity, this 3-month basis, of course, that was given to this, Is that sufficient? Has that given you enough surety with regards to where this currently stands and your preference?
Not really. I mean, if you still look at the wording of those clauses, we simply say after consultation and partners speak to one another in consultation. So we'll have to strengthen that partnership, but that will happen on a provincial level. So the interactions, and we'll have to engage with every single HOD in every province to see how we can strengthen that outside the scope now of those two clauses. But to emphasize or to give effect to what the court said, that the two parties must talk to one another. One cannot simply strong arm the other. That's against the spirit of the Constitution and the Schools Act. But I think there will be a time period for adjustment.
Yep.
But as long as we don't have sufficient schools, specifically in Gauteng and in the Western Cape, there will be a tussle between SGBs and the department until we've created enough good schools in every single province for every single child.
So ultimately, we're not taking away the power then of these school governing bodies and handing it over to provincial bodies. That's certainly what this is meant to detract from. Am I correct?
You're absolutely correct. Now, the power to determine the policy is still in the hands of the SGB. But on admissions, the final say, if there's a dispute and if all the criteria and procedural issues met, then somebody must make a final decision. And the Constitutional Court ruled in Rivonia that final decision is in the hands of the provincial HOD, but it's at the end of the process and there's a due process that must be followed. Even on the language, the Constitutional Court ruled in the Ermelo matter as well. How should we deal with languages? So if your school is full to the brim, then obviously there's no capacity to introduce a second language. But if there's space, the discussion will be a different discussion. But the ultimate decision maker or policy maker on school level is still the school governing body.
Yeah, as you said a little bit earlier, this doesn't necessarily take away all the admin issues or getting enough teachers into classrooms, getting enough books and infrastructure as well into all of that. Let me just ask you just full on about that. How do we get that right at this stage? Is it going to need further consultation and a few more years to get right?
No, it shouldn't be. It should be a leadership decision. The minister should crack the whip and the MSTs should do what they're supposed to do to make sure that the officials execute in terms of their mandate. So that's a managerial issue. It's a leadership issue. It's not a legislative issue.
Dr. Jaco Deacon, thank you so much for the time. Really appreciate it as we get, of course, some commentary as this happened just a little bit earlier on. It's our leading story this hour then, of course, as well. So Dr. Jaco Deacon is the CEO there of the Federation of Associations of Governing Bodies of South African Schools.